Hello, welcome to The Viewpoint. I am Mamadou Mbodj. In 2018, the president of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, declared 2019 the year of return to commemorate the 400th anniversary of the arrival of African slaves in America. In the course of 3 centuries or so, it is estimated that more than 12.5 million had been transported in what is generally known as the Atlantic slave trade. But of course, the idea of people in the diaspora returning has been with us since the 19th century, the Back to Africa movement, which was taken up by Marcus Garvey in the 20th century. And recently, this has taken on a more solid, formidable momentum. Quite a good number of African countries now are beginning to make that sort of return possible easily, returnee-friendly legislation and regulations. Here in this country, we've had our share of people returning, and recently an association was formed, the African Diaspora Returnees Association. And I have here with me their president, Shakina Chinedu, to help us explore the merits and principles of return. Thank you very much, Shakina, for joining us on The Viewpoint today.
And thank you for having me. This is going to be an interesting conversation, I believe.
Thank you. Now, I'm with you. Why Gambia? When did this relationship, one can call it that, or the romance with Gambia, when did it begin to reach the point that it has now?
Oh, I love that term. When did the romance start? I would say my romance and my marriage started with Gambia in 2005 on my first visit. And it was a visit that really took me to 2 different places. The Caribbean, where my parents originated from, and I made the comparison with Gambia. And believe it or not, there wasn't much to compare. The people are the same, the land is the same, the conditions are the same, but the only difference is this has a different history for someone like myself. As you mentioned in your opening statement, this is where our ancestors came from. So why not return here? So in 2005, I decided to make Gambia my home as a retirement place. But also looking at Africa and being a Garveyite myself and a Pan-African, Garvey always taught us that if we want Africa to be in a certain way, we have to make that choice. We have to make that position. And by returning here, it gives you the position that you can help develop Africa along with the Africans on the continent. Now, people like Kwame Nkrumah said that during the 60s in the independent revolution movement, Haile Selassie, Jomo Kenyatta, they all talked about the unity between the diasporans and the Africans on the continent. Now, who best to renovate your home than yourselves? So I think that's the relationship I would say with Gambia, that this is my home. And if I want to renovate it, or if I see renovations to be done, it should be me. It should be us from the diaspora doing that.
So you were born in the United Kingdom?
I was born in the United Kingdom to Caribbean parents.
From Antigua, I've read.
From Antigua, that's correct. You've done your homework. The beautiful island of Antigua. And the good thing, I think, the advantage I have is that my dad was very much a Pan-African as well. So he always spoke about Africa, even though he loved the Caribbean, but he always spoke about Africa and what we should be doing to uplift Africa. And so I grew up with that. And many other people grew up with that. And I think that's why a lot of people are coming back home.
Absolutely. This is quite interesting because this is, I said in my introduction, that the idea of Back to Africa movement really started in the 19th century through Garvey and
Absolutely.
and the whole period. But again, we've never really seen any substantial numbers coming. Why do you think that is so?
I think we have to look at the programming that has happened. Now, when someone like myself was growing up, I'm in my 50s, you had Tarzan on the TV, you had other negative issues on the TV. Now, there was always this thing about, you're not African, why associate with Africa? It's just a poor, desolate place. Don't bother with that. You've got all the trappings of the West here. Look how beautiful the West is. Stay here. So I think there was a small movement, the Rastafarians, they moved to Ethiopia and some other places, but it wasn't the critical mass. But as the critical mass started to gain more knowledge about their Africanness. And that started really in the 70s and 80s, you know, with the natural hair movement, the Black Panthers, you know, we are black, not coloured, not Negroes, things like that. People started slowly to look towards Africa and say, do you know what, Africa is our home, let's move towards it. But it took some time. But now the movement has really taken off.
Absolutely. So this is interesting. Then it will take us straight to the notion of belonging.
Mm-hmm.
There's an idea, there's a suggestion that after the slave trade, 300 years, after all this period,
Mm-hmm.
you had sort of evolved into something else, or what do you use as the base for this belonging? Is it race?
There's a number of things. So I was born in the UK, other people were born in the Caribbean or America, and there was a notion that that's where you belong, because that's where you were born. But you were always reminded that you're not from here. Now, I always use the analogy that I could be asked, where are you from? And I might say London, but they'll say, well, where are you originally from? So you see, that tells you straight away that they're expecting something else. You don't belong here. You're not originally from here. So yes, you might have been born in London, but there's somewhere else you should be, or somewhere else you've come from. And I think decades of that constant reminder that your ancestors were from somewhere else, you're not really from here, you don't really belong here, forces you to say, okay, if I don't belong here, where do I really belong? Let me look to where I belong. And I think that's where that movement really started from.
Well, absolutely. And then, of course, the question of this somewhere else. What is the nature, what is the character of this somewhere else? And perhaps one might even say that in that argument that you don't belong here, there's a faulty logic, a flawed logic somewhere. Then it puts you sort of in a situation where there is pressure really to deal with something really faulty at bottom.
Absolutely. And I think that's what a lot of people have said. Okay, if you don't want me here, I will look to my homeland. I will look to the land of my ancestors, and hopefully they will accept me when I go there. So there is a false logic. And then you see what's happening in America right now, where, you know, people are being shot and killed and ill-treated by the police and the system. And that's making them move even further, quicker, to somewhere else where they're going to be accepted.
Absolutely. We understand that in Ghana, for instance, with the year of return, the number of African Americans going to Ghana shot up by 26% from 2018 to 2019,
yes.
So something like that.
Yes.
So there's a new hunger to do there. So now we come to the somewhere else. For instance, what do you like about Gambia? Just 3 likes.
3. The weather, the stability, and the notion of development. Let me stress on that one. Gambia is a very small country. It's the smallest in Africa. It's very peaceful, no civil wars compared to other places. 2 different people, you've got Christians, you've got Muslims, get on very well together. Everybody lives side by side. But also, there's a great chance to develop Gambia. Gambia needs a lot of development. And I believe that if we come together as Africans, we can develop Africa. We can develop Gambia. And it's not too big to be out of our reach. You know, I'm not a statesperson or anything, but if I was to put a bet on it, I would say that Gambia could be turned around and developed within 5 years if we work together. Because we can see what needs to be done, and if we put our mindset and our visions and our finances together, it can be done. You know, we're busy developing countries that we've come from, and as I said to you, we're still not accepted. Why not bring the skills and the strategies and the policies and the finance and the economics here to Gambia and do it here in our own house? Absolutely. So I think, you know, if I was to choose those 3, those are the 3 that I would choose. Yes, sir.
So would you say, for instance, that perhaps it is something like the diaspora, that injection that perhaps the society needs to trigger, to kickstart, catalyze?
I would say that's a great catalyst, because people in the diaspora have access to more financial gain. because of the nature of maybe the skills and the jobs that they have there. So why not inject that into your homeland? Why not do that? Because if you were to add up all the years that diasporans spend abroad paying taxes and other bills, and there's lots of bills in the diaspora, but we brought that here, and you convert that into dollars, there's so much we could do here. I mean, when I look at the number of women dying in childbirth in Gambia here, it's very high. It's too much. There's a lot we can do to stop that. And it might be just a matter of creating a better blood bank, let's say, to stop the excessive bleeding after childbirth, let's say. So why can't we do something like to help ourselves?
Absolutely. Now you've told me what are your likes. What are your dislikes?
My dislikes, the slowness of development. I'm going to be honest. I do get frustrated with that because I love Gambia, and I would love to see Gambia be the place that Gambians want it to be. And, you know, I talk to Gambians and they want development. They really do. They want jobs. They want infrastructure. So some of my one of my main dislikes is the slow pace of development. As I said to you, I think 5 years, if we really, really concentrated on development in Gambia, I think 5 years we could make a huge turnaround. You know, we have rainy season every year. The roads are getting worse. We could start with things like that. You know, people's roofs are leaking. You know, there's small infrastructural things that we can do to really make our people comfortable in their own land. Absolutely. So I think that's one of my main dislikes, the slow pace of development.
Anything else? I listened to a returnee in Ghana saying, oh, the corruption. I'm not sure what you feel about that. The person was partly saying that you really cannot get government service of some sort without having to give bribes and that sort of thing. What do you mean?
I'm going to be honest here. Yes, corruption is one thing, but let me be quite honest. Corruption is everywhere. It's not only in Africa. I think in Africa we can see it more because it's not as stealth and as cute as they do in other countries.
And there isn't much, really, for now. There isn't much, so one can see it easily.
It's easily, but, you know, there's a lot of corruption in the UK, in America, in other places. It's everywhere. So I try not to say only Africa has corruption. Yes, it's there, and we have to deal with it.
And the impact.
The impact it has, because it's a smaller infrastructure. That's the only reason why. You know, if we were to narrow down, say, the West, we would see the corruption even more there. But because Gambia is so small, as you said, we see it more. But if you look at the proportionality of it, it's probably just the same. But yes, there's that I don't like either.
Absolutely. And have you got any sense of what ordinary people might think? Because in many ways there's an argument, there's a suggestion that this identity thing, it's really the educated middle classes that's really their problem. When you go to ordinary people, the sense of themselves is much narrower. It's completely different. Have you got any sense of what ordinary people might think?
Ordinary people in Gambia want what anybody wants in their own land. They want peace, they want enjoyment.
I mean, with the returnees, generally, the idea of how a return is giving them citizenship and living. Did you get any sense of?
Yes, some sense is that, yes, they, you know, and remember, Gambia has a love affair with Jamaica. They are into the reggae music, they're into the Rastafarian music, so they understand that fight for freedom that we as diasporans have gone through in our other lands. They understand that when we want that, when we come home, that we see ourselves as Africans, they see us as Africans too. They understand that. And they understand that mainly through the Rastafarian music, through Bob Marley and Peter Tosh and, you know, sort of all the artists that come here and sing about Africa. They know that we have a love affair with Africa and they accept us as part of the African family. So it's not just the middle class, it's the working class people also that said, yes, you should come home and enjoy Africa because it's your home. And this is why, you know, they'll say, you are welcome. You know, as you go around in Gambia, you are welcome, brother, you are welcome, sister. And they really mean that.
Oh, absolutely. But sometimes, as you see in certain societies, so far, we've got few, not that many just trickling in, as it were. Imagine if it were, if you were to pass legislation, it was free, and more numbers start coming. Don't you afraid that perhaps sentiments might begin to change, given how people can be?
I understand it, and there's always xenophobia wherever you go.
Absolutely.
But the difference is, we've got to come here and prove ourselves. We've got to earn their trust. We've got to earn their likability. We can't just come and say, I'm here, I'm entitled to anything. No, what are we contributing to society? And that always softens the blow. So even if the floodgates were open and Gambia said, well, they're coming here and they're taking over, what does that mean? Are we taking over in terms of putting infrastructure in place? Are we bringing finances here? What are we doing? We've got to work with Gambians to earn their trust and earn their place in this society, because we've got to carve out a place for ourselves. We can't come and demand a place. Yes, our ancestors came from here hundreds of years ago, but we've still got to earn our place. And this is why, you know, the association that I chair has been doing a lot of work within the Constitution movement.
Absolutely, we'll come to that. I was just, I suppose there, what I was alluding to without really touching it, given the way we organize ourselves, we categorize ourselves, the identity, there is certainly national identity, but there are narrower ethnic identities. Would you be another tribe?
Would I be?
The returnees, would that come and form another tribe, another elite group? There is that, the fear.
That might be the fear.
There might be the fear that we'll just have another tribe here, and then what some people do talk about, the uppityness. You see, these symptoms that we've seen from the Western really towards the African, then you tend to see that unfortunately some black people also embody these things, perhaps even without realizing it, the blind side, given the culture in which they grew up.
And I understand, and I agree with you. You know, there's different types of people. You know, on the plantation we had the overseers, we had the field Negroes, we had the house Negroes, but we also had the ones that would take the information back because they thought they were a bit better. You know, those might have been the ones that were what they called the mulattoes, because they were lighter skinned, different hair, you know, the master's children, and they thought they had something above the others. And that hasn't changed. And yes, some people come here and think, well, because I'm from the West and I'm educated, I have something over the Africans, and they might treat them as such. But we've got to put things in place to make sure that doesn't happen. I don't believe in tribalism. I believe we're all Africans, and we don't have time for tribalism because that further divides us. You know, we've got so much work to do as Africans. We don't have time to say, well, you're Jola, you're Serahuli, I'm this. Yes, I appreciate people come from different communities, but to allow tribalism to get in the way of unity is quite wrong. And so, yes, I can respect who you are, but what about, how do we move this bottle of water together? Are we going to say, well, I'm not moving it because I'm Serahuli, I'm not moving it because I'm Wolof? Let's get together and move it. That's the important thing. How do we move the bottle, not what different tribes you come from? But
this is it, the complexity sort of identity. I mean, the educated, everybody, leaders, we've been talking about this for a long time. Let's move away from tribalism, but it appears to be the case that one's ethnic identity, your mother tongue, essentially, this is what we're talking about here. Gambia doesn't have a language. English is the language.
Yes.
Your mother tongue is really what your identity is. So we are likely to go through a long period of perhaps forming a national identity, isn't it? So we have to respect that. This is how people identify themselves.
And maybe I see things differently. I just see us as African. I don't even recognize the borders that the Berlin Conference carved up Africa. I just see us as one group of people. I'm not saying we're a homogenous group of people. I see us as a group of people who need to get our act together and work together for the betterment of the continent. And if we don't do that together and, you know, we allow tribalism and other things to get in the way, we will never move from where we are.
That is very, very true. But again, in dealing with the situation, one must acknowledge it. This has been the thing. It's just that we haven't had the blueprint possibility to go beyond this narrower confines to a national identity. And in many ways, I suppose my point is, you might be caught up in this ethnicization, in this ethnic thing within. How would one deal with that?
There is that, but you know, by talking about it like you and I are doing it now, we can start to educate that the important thing is, yes, you can hold on to your ethnic identity, but what about your national identity? That's more important.
Absolutely.
And
go on.
And that cannot be allowed to get into the way of the development of Gambia, because Gambia is for all tribes, for all ethnic groups, not just for one. So why don't we put our differences aside and look at what needs to be done? And that includes the diaspora. We can't, you know, come here and encourage tribalism either. We should be saying, no, yes, I see that you're Wolof, I see that you're Serahule, I see that you're Mandinka, but I also see you as an African. What can we do together as two Africans to move forward in Gambia? That's the important thing.
Yes, earlier on you talked about the economic development with investment and trade and that sort of thing. So now it's almost like we're touching on a kind of a social, cultural addition. What do you think? What do you think culturally there is such thing, culturally, socially, that you can add to the current mix?
Okay. We have, I mean, I would say we've been away from our Africanness for hundreds of years. I don't have a language that you have. Maybe I could have had this language. The culture I've lost out on. Yeah, we have a pseudo culture in the Caribbean, not quite the same. As you know, the Caribbeans held on to some of their Africanness, especially in places like Haiti. They held on to that. So I've got to come and relearn now, be schooled by the Africans to teach me the Wolof, the Mandinka, the Seri, you know, whatever the language is, but also the cultural nuances. You know, what happens this time of the year? Why do we celebrate this? Why do we do it? Why do we have a naming ceremony? Why do we have marriages in this way? We've got to get back to that. And we can only do that if we work together. So being caught up, it's about teaching each other. We can bring some of our diasporan cultural nuances to Africa also.
Absolutely.
And you'll see the similarities. I was quite amazed when I did some Wolof classes, and some of the words in Wolof, we use them in the Caribbean in the same way. So I said, well, hold on a minute, we're not that different after all. We have more similarities than differences. So let's start sharing those so that we can show the Africans when we come back home, we're no different to you. You may think we were just abandoned people that were taken away hundreds of years ago. In fact, we're the same as you.
Absolutely. But the nuances would be interesting. For instance, what nuances you reckon you can bring over here?
I think there's a lot of cultural things that we can bring. Maybe the way we raise our children, very, very similar in terms of, you know, the parents are the authority, the children listen and have respect. Looking after our elderly, again, very, very similar sort of thing. Even some of the cultural things about marriage and relationships, very, very similar. You know, we don't have the same, you know, what I like about here is that the parents will get together and discuss. We've lost some of that in the West, but we still have that in Africa, which is very nice. The two families, because it is a culmination of two families when a marriage happens. It's not just the boy and the girl, you know, getting married. It's the two families coming together, the nuclear and the extended family. So some of those things I'd like to get back to. You know, we have some of it, but not quite the same. And even just maybe sitting around and talking. You know, in Africa, there's a thing of, you know, the older people sit around and talk to the younger people, the storytelling. We have something similar in the Caribbean.
Absolutely, but again, here again, we have that patriarchy.
Yeah.
A lot of women will tell you that the system really doesn't favor you, particularly the educated urban. And they will also tell you about children. Sometimes what happens, you see them, mostly some of them in the streets. And
Yes.
you know what I mean?
Yes.
So you've got these differences. So perhaps one might be hoping that you might bring certain ideas. I've even heard somebody say something like even the attitudes in public institutions. Because it's not simply that when the diaspora, when they come, it's just going to be their business. Then you become a citizen, you can hold public office. Even that.
Yes.
So one is thinking along these nuances that could possibly push.
And that's what I was saying about us working together. Unless we are fully accepted that we can hold public office, we can get into the influence in the nuances, we're going to find it very difficult to do so because we'll always be seen as outsiders. So we've got to change that narrative that we are the Caribbeans coming over. No, we are the Africans returning home. That's what we need to see it as. Once we get that sort of strategy in our minds, then it will be very different. We will then have more open doors, open minds. So, okay, you're coming back home. What is it you see that needs doing here? How can we work together? We're a little bit away from that at the moment, but there is a chance for us to get to that if we put things in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And the return, of course, one of the hot topics that everybody talks about with these ideas is about the dual citizenship. So how would it work? As our constitution right now states, if what is going to naturalize,
yes,
you have to renounce.
No, in the old one,
yes,
in the
1997 one.
But in this draft, which was very good, it said...
Okay, so this is the new draft, is it?
Yes.
The one that was just recently rejected
this is the draft.
In the National Assembly?
Yes. So in the new draft, what they've said is that if the country that you're coming from reciprocates it to Gambians, then you don't have to give up your dual citizenship. And I think that's quite important because many of us have got children, families, elderly parents back home. We might have certain illnesses that we need to go back and have checks on. So it's important that we are able to travel backwards and forwards if we need to. So I think the dual citizenship is important. Yes, and I think also we have earned that. Why should we allow those countries that we've paid into to just get away with what we've paid into that system? Why shouldn't we be able to still access some of those things?
Absolutely. But currently, under the 1997 Constitution, we are under that one.
Yes.
It indicates that one was renounced.
Yes.
Renounced that. So you said earlier, you just mentioned in passing that you've been working with the Constitutional Review Commission.
Yes.
So
the African Diaspora Returnees Association started about 2 years ago, 2018. It's a registered organisation. We have a board. Unfortunately, none of them were available to come with me today, but we have a board of 7. And, they assist me with the work. And it's a 2-prong association. The first prong is to support people wanting to return home, but also people here that need help. So it's almost like a bridge, a smooth bridge of transition to return home, but even when you do reach home, that we can still support you when you're at home. The second arm is citizenship. And this is important, and it's historic because the citizenship didn't just start with the African Diaspora Returnees Association. This goes way back to the early 2000s, where there was the Homecomers group. And this was another group of diasporans from the West who said, we're coming home, we would like citizenship. And they started to lobby also. So really what I'm doing here with the board is on the back of that. So I must give credit where credit's due. Now a few of them received some citizenship under an executive order at the Roots Festival about 10 years ago. Now, as much as I think that's really good, and Ghana did the same thing through application in their year of return. I think they gave 126 citizens their citizenship, but they had been applying for that citizenship for a few years before then. It wasn't just for the year of return. When I heard that Gambia was rewriting their constitution, as a legal profession, I thought the best way to get citizenship is the legal route, to put it in a constitutional document or an act of parliament.
Let me just put that you're a trained lawyer, isn't it?
Yes.
You're a lawyer by profession, yeah.
And also that, if it's in the constitution, anybody coming behind us would be able to hold this up and say, this is why I'm entitled to it. So we're thinking about generations coming after us that would like to reside and live and become Gambian citizens. So we got some advice and said, look, go to the CRC, make a submission, which we did. And I wasn't really sure. I actually did the presentation and we filmed it. So we have the evidence. We filmed the whole presentation because in years to come, we would want the generations to see what efforts we made to get citizenship for them. So we did that. And what we proposed was that we have fast-track citizenship. Now, under the 1997 Constitution, you have to wait 15 years to be naturalised. That's quite a long time. Bearing in mind, some of us might be in our 50s, our 60s, and if you have to wait 15 years, it's a very long time. But also, I think 15 years is quite a lengthy time for Africans returning home. So what I didn't just say to them, look, we're coming here, as soon as we come off the plane, give us something. That I don't think that's quite, appropriate. We have to work with the system. And as you said, you have to work with the country you're going into. So rather than 15 years, if we work with you, why not say 2 to 4 years? Because there's certain checks you might need to do on us. Make sure we're not criminals, we're not drug dealers, whatever it might be. Check to see who we are, our credentials. And even in the Constitution, it talks about a number of credentials that you must meet before you are naturalised. So we'll give the country time to do that. So I said to them, well, look, if you make it fast track just for us, that will be an exceptional clause for us, the descendants of the enslaved coming home. So it will be an exceptional clause, it will be fast tracked, 2 to 4 years, and it makes it generational. Now, is it possible for me to just read out what the CRC recommended in their book?
Quickly. Mm-hmm.
And this is section 188. Now, this would have gone to Parliament if it had been agreed. And I just want to let the Gambian people know that the African Diaspora Returnees Association are responsible for the recommendation in section 188. Let me put my glasses on. This is what happens when you get old.
Yes.
It says one position paper called for adding an exceptional clause to the Constitution to enable descendants of former slaves to be eligible to apply for citizenship by naturalisation after 2 to 4 years of residency in the Gambia. Such a provision, the paper indicated, would encourage those descendants of former slaves who are returning home to the Gambia to make significant investments in the country. The CRC, having carefully considered this submission, formed the view that the Gambia should be welcoming to descendants of the enslaved. However, the subject matter goes beyond the descendants who are currently in the country, and they include those that may yet wish to settle in the Gambia. This has significant ramifications and require further study to better appreciate any potential implications for the country. This will also ensure that the descendants of the enslaved, when granted citizenship, are fully integrated into Gambian society. In this context, therefore, the draft constitution provides a framework to enable the National Assembly to enact legislation conferring citizenship on persons who are otherwise not eligible under the draft constitution.
Absolutely. So what did you feel when the National Assembly members rejected this draft constitution? So what next?
I was very upset by that because I felt that even if there were some clauses they didn't want in the constitution as such, I felt that they could have sent some back for changing, but not to reject the whole thing. And I think, the CRC worked very, very hard for 2 years. My understanding is that they weren't given the opportunity to advise Parliament about maybe some of the issues they didn't understand in the constitution, the draft constitution.
But there was a period, wasn't it, when the CRC published an initial draft so that people to review.
There was the first one, yes.
And then submit, as it were, before the final one was submitted to the president.
Yes.
We believe that the National Assembly members sort of did that. It was just that perhaps the CRC just stuck to its guns.
I really don't know. But I think, you know, with all the time and financial costs, you know, this cost over the 2 years, we could have given it a chance. I felt that we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater, and we could have really said, okay, there are some good things, there was not some good things, but let's look at what's good and put that aside. Let's look at what's not so good and rework it. And maybe let's consult with the people a little bit more to see exactly what we could do with that. But I think to reject the whole thing, I think that's a mistake.
Yes, but does it tell you also about the political complexities, if you like, of what you want to return to? Simply just what is. I mean, in the National Assembly, they are the representatives of the people. And apparently, most of them would say, oh, I had surveys, people were telling me, my electorate were telling me this, were telling me that.
Yes.
So these things are really complex. Hence, that was why earlier on we said that we need to carry the people, as it were, for some of these regulations, for some of these policies to be implemented.
And I think we have a second chance, and I think now that, okay, the National Assembly has spoken, but let the Gambian people speak now. I think let them speak now. What do they want from this constitution? What do they understand from the draft constitution? And the CRC, they had, I think, about maybe 10 or 12 public consultation events around the country. And a lot of that information has been put in these booklets, the statistics, the research, the surveys. Let's now look at that to see what do the Gambian people want. Rather than just throw this away, let's now return to the people and let's see if we can match what the people are saying, what Parliament is saying, to see if there's any correlation. If not, we may have to look at this again.
Yeah, again, absolutely. And with the association, what's your membership? The membership of the Returnees Association?
It's a difficult thing to say because we have people in the diaspora and we have people here. And really what we say to people, if you're a diasporan, the association is working on your behalf. It's for you. So it could go into hundreds.
Okay, but there's no formal way.
There's no formal number at the moment. There's no formal number at the moment.
Absolutely. So what sort of activities do you do? Do you have any social activities? What do you do? Or are you just living as citizens? You just
no, for 2 years in a row we've had something called Crossing Continents, which is what can I say, a show that we put on each year, so to speak. The first year we put on a show looking at differences. So we had the Gambians and we had ourselves, and we compared poetry, dance, drama, different things to show that we are similar rather than different. And we had a big show for that, and that was very successful. The second year, which was last year, we had a opening ceremony of one of our estates that we want to put together. I run my own business called Nubian L Consultants, and that's about making sure people buy their land appropriately, that, you know, all the checks and balances are done. If they're building, that I help them project manage those bills, you know, things like that. So we have an estate that we're putting together, and we dedicated that estate back to our ancestors. And so the ancestors left through the door of no return. We are returning through the door of return. So we had a big celebration as part of Crossing Continents to rededicate that plot of land back to our ancestors, as if to invite them back home, because they were taken away, they never came back. But what we're saying to you is, we are returning through our ancestors. They might have been not able to come back, but through our DNA and our lineage, we are returning home. So we put on things like that. And there are other things that we're going to be doing. We're in the planning process now of putting a program together of how we can support not only people coming home, but how we can support Gambians as well, young people with skills and work and different things like that. So we're putting a program together right now.
Yes, earlier on you mentioned land. You were also quite worried about land tenure here, particularly with the leasehold
Yes.
for people who are not citizens.
Yes.
So you had an issue with that.
We did. In the first draft, which was the pink book, it talked about changing land to leasehold, retrospective, holding it only for 30 years, in aggregate for 90 years, so you can renew it 3 times. Now, as you can appreciate, many have bought land not under leasehold, but under customary, so they're able to hold it in perpetuity, pass it on in their will for their children, etc. And then to be faced with this, it's like, well, how does that leave us? How are we able to pass on our legacy to our children? Because not only are we coming home, we are encouraging our children to come home and help to build Africa as well. And we are the first generation putting things in place for them, buying a plot of land, building a house, so that our children have somewhere to come and live when they come home. If that's taken away from us, that's going to leave us in a quandary, really. You know, what do we do? If I pass on, what do my children do? What happens to the house I've built and the land that I bought for them? Do they lose it all? We really didn't know what that meant. So we started lobbying on that as well. And we had a lot of support from all the large estate agents, because many of those estate agents, the very, TAFs and the Blue Oceans and the Global Properties, they depend on diasporans coming home as well to sell their properties to. So it would have affected them as much as it would have affected us. So they joined the lobby as well to say, I think you need to rethink that, because one, if people have bought land in a particular way, would it be a breach of contract to just change it halfway through? We've got our documents that says we own our land in this way. Can the government really just change that? So, we need to look at all those legalities as well.
Absolutely.
In the second draft that went to Parliament, it now talked about, again, holding land in a lease, but for 50 years, renewable. It didn't say how many years it's renewable. It was silent on that. But again, we still need to know how many times can that be renewed. Is it once, twice? Can it be refused? Will it go through? Because I might not be here in 50 years' time. What future do my children have if they go to renew it? We don't know. It was silent.
Absolutely. But you will also concede that notions of land, citizenship can be so contentious.
Yes.
Politicians might be reluctant because they're not really sure what the electorate, how they would behave, and some people have also advanced the idea that when land really, when it's an open market, as it were, perhaps most Gambians would be priced out, and pretty soon you're going to see possibly prime land all owned by what they call foreigners.
Yes.
So one is quite careful of sort of the potential social ramifications of tomorrow.
I do understand that, but I think what you have to understand is we from the diaspora, we're not buying up massive plots of land to develop like the Swamis and other nationalities coming here. We don't have that financial income. We're coming here, we might buy 1 or 2 plots for our family, but we're not building a housing estate of 400, let's say, or 300. That's not what we're doing. And even if we did do that, the benefits would be that it's creating jobs. We wouldn't be pricing Gambians out of the market. We would be contributing to the infrastructure of Gambia. What would we be doing? Not just houses. It might be hospitals, schools, skill centres, different things to work with Gambians. Say, if there was a big piece of land, what can we do with that? We might need more hospitals, as I said here, to stop, the childbirth deaths, etc. Maybe schooling, different types of schools as well. So we could add to that infrastructure, but we have to do that together. We wouldn't come and take prime land away from Gambians, because that's not what we're here to do. We are here to contribute and develop, not to take away.
Have you engaged the government? I mean, I know that you were saying with the CRC. What about the National Assembly, the lawmakers, the government, people who can really make things happen through legislation?
We are working on that. That's not so easy, but submissions have gone in to, speak to them.
Why do you think it's not easy? Why isn't it easy?
It's a matter of the timing of replying to letters. That can be frustrating sometimes, that, you know, it takes a long time for letters to be replied to.
Absolutely.
But we won't give up.
Okay.
We won't give up.
So what's the plan for the future now, given the circumstances, given how things are?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of watching and waiting right now, but we're not giving up on the Constitution. It's a valid document. We're not giving up on Parliament. And it's a matter of really just making sure that we have a strategy that matches with what Gambia needs, working with Gambia. So it's about dialogue, and ensuring that that dialogue suits the needs of Gambia moving forward. We're not here to get in the way. We're not here to create any stumbling blocks. We're here to create the smooth path that Gambia wants in terms of development.
So would your association be sort of formalized, sort of to target how?
It's a formal organisation. It's registered.
It is registered, but the membership.
The membership, yes, that will be formalised as well. Yes, where people will be members of the organisation. There are some members already. We have a number of forms that have been completed already, but we want to encourage more to join.
Absolutely. And what about more advocacy work, more dialogue with ordinary people? Are they, do you do that sort of thing?
Public meetings will be open for everyone, and we would encourage more Gambians to attend any public meetings, because we want to hear from them as well. So some of the questions you were asking me about, what about the local citizens, we want to hear from them, and the only way we could do that is have public meetings where we could say, what do you think? Do you think we're going along the right lines? Do you think our strategy is correct? What do you think? And it's about working together.
I said, and the Gambian diasporans, which is slightly different.
Yes.
You know, those who perhaps were born here, they went over there, or maybe their immediate parents, you know, one or the other.
Yeah.
Do you have any relationship with the so-called Gambian diasporans?
Yes, we have some relationship there, and they are very keen for us to become citizens of Gambia. And I think because they understand, because they have travelled, they understand the nature of where we're coming from and understand why we want to return home. So they have also, and when you look at the statistics in the CRC research, the Gambian diasporans were very, very keen for us to have citizenship here, very keen. So I know that they're on board with us returning home as Africans. They see us as African also. So we would implore them to speak to their families about accepting us here in Africa,
absolutely,
well in Gambia.
So now, towards the end, when you reflect on recent political experience, what's been going on, you know what I mean, and your agenda, your plan for what you want, generally, what has been really the major stumbling blocks? Really,
I think the stumbling block would be, one, we are outside of the politics in Gambia. You know, we can't get involved because we're not citizens. We can't vote. We just can't get involved. So our voices, it's difficult for our voices to be heard. And that's always a difficulty in any society if you're voiceless. And this is why programs like this, the other video I did with QTV a couple of years ago, which went viral, you know, and other YouTube channels, that's where we can have our voice. Because it would be really great if we could get to the National Assembly and, you know, have an address. To maybe those National Assembly members don't really understand not only why we want to come home, but why we want to get involved in the development of Gambia as well. And unless they hear from us, they won't know. They can't act on what they don't know. So I think it's imperative for us to try and get involved and get our voice heard, have a voice in Gambia, a structured voice that can be taken seriously by those that can carry that message forward.
That's it. So what's the plan? How are you going to do that?
Do I give away my secrets, or do I hold them close to my chest? I think wait and see, right. I would say. Don't want to give away all our secrets. But yeah, there is a plan. There is a plan, because I think it's quite important, as I said, to have a voice in Gambia. And I think not only for the National Assembly, but for the Gambian people as well. I think they want to hear our voice. They appreciate our voice. And I think, you know, not only are we voiceless, even some Gambians are voiceless. Even some Gambians. So if all the voiceless join together, then we can make a difference. And I think that's where we're heading.
Absolutely. So we've come really to the very end. Any final words to the Gambians?
Can I address the Gambian people?
You may.
Okay.
We've got maybe 2 minutes.
Okay. Gambia, thank you for inviting us into your country, accepting us into your country. But I think the next step now is to see us as Africans. We see ourselves as Africans. We implore you to see us as African. And one of the ways that you can do that is to grant us citizenship. Citizenship that's not 15 years down the line, because carrying aliens cards every year is not conducive to us. It doesn't allow us to feel accepted. But what we've suggested to the CRC, I would really like to see that carried forward. Fast-track citizenship within 2 to 4 years, working with your country and your government so that we can help develop Gambia. We are here to develop. We are here to make Gambia a beacon within West Africa. We can only do that together. And I would ask you to work with us as diasporans returning home and work with us to develop Gambia so that we can all be proud Gambians one day and show the rest of Africa what we can do. We are a small country, but we can do this. And I would really like for us to be the beacon in West Africa. Everybody else can follow us. We've got the blueprint. Let's show everybody else how it's done. Thank you again for accepting us. And thank you from the African Diaspora Returnees Association, who are here working on behalf of diasporans returning home who really want to develop Gambia.
All
Thank you.
All right, there. Shakina Chinedu. Thank you very much, really, for joining us on the Viewpoint today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you very much to the viewers for joining us on the Viewpoint. Until next time, I'm Mudumbuj. Goodbye.
Gambia may be the smallest country in Africa, but it will host the second largest gathering of world leaders in 2022. To successfully host the OIC Summit and put the Gambia on the global stage, the government of the Gambia set up OIC Gambia to mobilize resources for the implementation of key development and infrastructure projects on a scale never seen before. 20 new roads will be constructed across the country, and the Bertel Harding Highway will be expanded into a dual carriage highway of 2 lanes on each side from the airport to Sting Corner. All people in the Gambia deserve clean water and a constant flow of electricity. Therefore, an entirely new water system will be constructed, including new transmission and distribution networks to meet the increasing demand. In order to provide a more reliable supply of electricity, the OIC Gambia project will replace and double the capacity of the NAWEC transformers and overhead electric cables. We will equip the police with modern apparatus and technical training in an effort to keep the streets of the Gambia safe. By building the largest international conference center in the region, a 5-star hotel with state-of-the-art facilities, first-class mobility services, and improving the VVIP experience at the Banjul International Airport, OIC Gambia will position the Gambia as the leading conference destination in West Africa. With our partners in the tourism sector, we will reinforce the preeminent position of our nation, the Smiling Coast, as a go-to destination. The OIC Gambia will create strategic partnerships that calls for the involvement of local talent and businesses as a matter of requirement. In short, OIC Gambia projects will create jobs, boost commerce, accelerate growth, improve the urban outlook and lifestyles of many families across the Gambia. So let's support the OIC Gambia as it prepares us for one of the biggest global events. OIC Gambia, building today for a better tomorrow.